I feel very strongly that it's a disgraceful way to treat his son. I listened to Carole, and she describes his book Spare as a temper tantrum. I would say it's more of a very honest account of a rather toxic family. The problem is, the royal family have been deeply toxic hostile to outsiders. They have a history of it. First of all, in recent memory, we had Wallis Simpson, who was treated very badly.
Yep.
Then we had Peter Townsend, who Princess Margaret wasn't allowed to marry. Then Mark Phillips was treated quite badly. Then Lady Diana, and we know how that ended. Moving forwards, we have Sarah Ferguson, who again received enormous hostility from the press. And most recently,
history here. Sarah Ferguson had a very open affair where a guy was sucking her toes in a holiday destination.
John Bryan.
And you imagine that she should be allowed back into the family. Have you forgotten what Harry has done? Have you forgotten it?
Well, hang on a second. What has he actually done? He's merely told the...
Hang on,
no, Sally was asking a rhetorical question, which means she's asking it and then she's going to answer it. It wasn't a question to you. Go on, Sally. Plough on.
Well, to be fair, Harry is a victim of press manipulation and intrusion, just like many previous incarnations. Never mind what Sarah Ferguson did or didn't do on that particular occasion. Overall, she received some extremely hostile press intrusion.
I think you've made a fair point. I'm going to come on your side, because the toe-sucking was after she was exiled, but Philip took against her.
Let's be brutally honest, boy. There are many, many other examples of the royal family doing outrageous things. I also think we ought to...
Go on.
The lamentable history of the royal family. And one of the tenets of the Church of England, of which King Charles is the head, is forgiveness.
That's true,
and
Gemma.
You have to
What do you think, Gemma? Forgive. Thank you, Sally.
It was one of those rare, electrifying moments on British daytime television. The kind that pierces through the sterile fog of royal pageantry and decorum. The kind that lingers in the air like smoke after a fire. A moment where truth, raw and undiluted, elbowed its way into the carefully curated space of mainstream media. On The Jeremy Vine Show, known more for its polite debates and fence-sitting than for outright confrontation, a caller phoned in and shattered the glass with just one line. The royal family has a history of being toxic to outsiders, a sentence so deceptively simple and yet so profoundly truthful that it made the room shift. That one phrase cut deeper than any BBC documentary, deeper than any headline, because it was honest, unscripted, and echoed what so many of us have screamed into the void for years. And the effect was immediate. Carole Malone, a regular on the panel and a self-appointed guardian of the monarchy's ever-cracking image, panicked. Her reaction was almost comical in its desperation. Hands flapping, voice rising, practically gasping for a lifeline to steer the conversation back into safe waters. But Jeremy Vine? No spin, no caveats, no diplomatic hedging. He simply nodded and agreed. Quietly, yes, but firmly, with the kind of conviction that only comes from finally acknowledging what's long been obvious. And in that rare sliver of honesty, Jeremy Vine did something few mainstream presenters ever dare to do. He placed himself not beside the power, but beside the truth. Whether he realized it or not, in that moment he wasn't just agreeing with a caller, he was aligning himself with history, with survivors, with the castaways of Britain's most emotionally repressive institution. He was standing symbolically next to Meghan Sussex, who endured more vilification in 4 years than some royals see in a lifetime. He stood beside Princess Diana, whose tragic death still echoes as a grim reminder of what the crown will sacrifice for its own survival. He stood beside Prince Harry, who's endured character assassination for simply refusing to let the firm swallow his wife and children whole. And more importantly, Vine stood against the hypocrisy of an institution that clutches its pearls at the thought of modernity while privately perpetuating archaic cruelty behind palace doors. The monarchy wasn't built for truth. It was built for control, and it has weaponized tradition as a shield against criticism for centuries. Meghan didn't marry into a family. She stepped into a centuries-old institution obsessed with its own image, allergic to accountability, and hell-bent on silencing anything that threatens its artificial glow. The war didn't begin when she spoke to Oprah. It began the moment she existed as herself, a confident, biracial, accomplished woman who didn't beg for their approval, who didn't crumble under their coded language, and who had the audacity to be loved before she ever even met Harry. That kind of woman was never going to be accepted by the monarchy, not when they've spent generations perfecting the art of sanitizing royal womanhood. They wanted obedience, not individuality. They wanted a puppet, not a partner. And the second Meghan refused to contort herself into their narrow expectations, they unleashed the oldest trick in the royal playbook: ostracize, leak, isolate, and destroy. And the press? Oh, they danced to the tune like trained dogs. The British tabloids hounded her with headlines so absurd they'd be laughable if they weren't so dangerous. Holding her baby bump? Narcissism? Eating avocado toast? A human rights issue? Waking up in the morning? Apparently a plot to undermine the Queen. Meanwhile, Kate Middleton could sneeze and be called ethereal. The disparity wasn't just obvious, it was sinister. And the institution didn't just sit back and allow it. They enabled it. They let it fester. Silence isn't neutrality, it's complicity. The palace didn't issue a single forceful public defense of Meghan. They didn't challenge the lies. They didn't correct the smear campaigns. And when Meghan revealed in the Oprah interview that she was suicidal, that she begged for help and was denied, the royal family didn't express grief or concern. They sent out a four-word dismissal that will go down as one of the coldest statements in modern royal history. Recollections may vary. That's what they said to a woman speaking her truth about racism and mental health. That was the extent of their compassion. Not a statement of solidarity, not an apology, not a promise to do better, just vague language meant to cast doubt while pretending to care. It was a masterclass in palace PR. Polished cruelty cloaked in formality. Let's be real. The toxicity isn't an accident, it's embedded in the system. Look at the women the institution has tried to break. Princess Margaret denied the love of her life because it didn't fit the mold. Diana, adored by the people but loathed by the firm for stealing the spotlight. Sarah Ferguson, mocked and shunned. Camilla, once vilified, now crowned, because the rules only bend when it suits the palace's survival. And now Meghan, who faced racism, classism, misogyny, and xenophobia from the second her relationship became public. The hostility wasn't just subtle, it was structural. Leaks from the palace, smears from sources close to the royals, public events where Meghan was visibly isolated. The refusal to give her son Archie the protection of a prince title, despite precedent. And when it all became too much, when the walls began closing in, what did Harry do? He left, not in disgrace, but in defiance, because he saw what the firm had done to his mother. He wasn't about to let history repeat itself on his wife and child. And for that, he's been vilified, accused of being weak, manipulated, a traitor. But let's not get it twisted. Prince Harry did what generations of royal men should have done but didn't. He chose his family over the institution. He chose his wife's life over the monarchy's image. And still, people like Carole Malone go on air and push the narrative that Harry owes the royal family an apology. For what exactly? For refusing to watch his wife break apart piece by piece under the weight of their silence? For standing up to a monarchy that's never been forced to reckon with its own cruelty? For speaking the truth out loud when everyone else whispered it behind closed doors? Please, if anything, the institution owes Harry and Meghan the apology, not the other way around. But this is the tragedy of the British monarchy. It doesn't learn, it doubles down. It protects itself at all costs, even if that means erasing the humanity of its own. What we witnessed on the Jeremy Vine show wasn't just a caller being brave, it was a reckoning. A moment where, honestly, the air cleared for just a second and we all saw the royal illusion crack. Jeremy Vine's agreement might seem small, but in the context of British media, where, loyalty to the crown is still treated like a religion, it was seismic. It was proof that even within the establishment, there are those willing to question the narrative, and that's where change begins. Not with grand statements, but with tiny ruptures in the wall of silence. So let the firm clutch its pearls. Let the loyalists like Carole Malone twist themselves into knots trying to preserve the fantasy. Because the truth is out, and honestly, no amount of PR spin or tabloid venom can put it back in the bottle. The royal family has been toxic to outsiders, not just once or twice, but repeatedly, systematically, and unapologetically. And no amount of palace pomp, jubilee celebrations, or Commonwealth tours can erase that truth. The world saw it, the world heard it, and now, thanks to a brave caller and an honest moment on live television, the conversation has changed. Forever.